anyone here would like to sign up for public comment, there are sign-in books at either entrance.
Let's look at Marcus after the shorter.
A little bit challenging. There's a lot of misunderstandings.
We're gonna get started. I just want to let everybody know that if you wouldn't mind just taking your seats.
Icing issues, I would.
I'm so excited to be using this gavel. I know Evelyn will teach me well. If there's any specific pieces, well, Ray Liu, new chair for the Board of Trustees for the Boston Public Library, and I bring this meeting to order. I think our first order of business is to acknowledge our EDI statement. And without necessarily reading all the words, this is a statement which reaffirms our commitment to racial equity and principles of diversity, equity, inclusion more broadly. I trust that this all resonates with everybody, and we agree with this as a guiding principle for this meeting and all of our actions with the Boston Public Library. Thank you very much. I think with next, did we want to do roll call?
Yes. I do want to acknowledge there are two trustees who I know will be absent today due to a conflict with their annual meeting at work. First, Evelyn Arano Ortiz.
Here.
Navjeet Bal.
Here.
Joe Berman. Jim Canales.
Here.
Cheryl Cronin.
Here.
John Heiler. Jeff Hawkins is one of the employees I mentioned. Julie Kim.
Here.
Welcome. Jonathan Levine is also Ray Liu.
Here.
Jose Masso has called to say he's stuck in an Uber and he will be here shortly. So we will acknowledge him when he attends. Portia Olawala.
Here.
Mike Rush. Christian Westra.
Here.
And Lynn Perry Mooten. I will acknowledge the trustees as they come. A few of them are sending me texts as I do this roll call. So
Absolutely. It's great.
we do have quorum.
Great. Before approving the minutes, you want to show the next slide, I believe, and the next slide, which I'll hand to Evelyn, of course. What is this one about, Evelyn?
So, quick brief history. The BPL created, after we created this strategic plan a few years ago, one of the principles was fun. And so they've created a golf tournament. So I participated for the past couple of years. My team swept every trophy. I got closest to the pin, and this is the trophy. You have to return it every year. Ellen, our prior CFO, it's a little bitter because she lost her trophy. But it's a lot of fun. We only play 9 holes, and that's a picture. My team, we swept every single longest drive, closest to the pin, and the overall. So trustees are welcome, regardless the skills levels. And I challenge you for a trophy next year.
Love it.
Just want to acknowledge Joe Berman has joined.
Thank you.
Hey, John Hyler.
And John Heiler.
Thank you. Welcome. Welcome. And I love that, Evelyn, because I think one of my goals personally this year is to build more connective tissue, as they say, between the trustees and staff and the trustees and the public. So thank you very much for that. I think next agenda item would be approval of the minutes. Evelyn was interim chair at that time from May 21st, 2024. I'm hoping that the trustees had a chance to review the 2 sets of documents. And I guess I will call for a motion to approve. Second?
Second.
Does any nays? We all approve? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So approved. Thank you very much. Great. And as we move on, before introducing the new trustees, I just want to open this up for maybe just some quick opening remarks from me. And I just want to thank really all that have welcomed me into this new role. It's been, as they say, drinking from the fire hose, but specifically my fellow trustees around the table, affiliate board members, and most of all, the staff that I see many familiar faces here, but especially David and Pamela, who have been my guides throughout all of this. And my goal of the last couple of months have been to learn as much as possible, to gain a foundational understanding really of this incredible institution. I've had the opportunity to engage with one-on-ones with most of the trustees and just a few more left in the closing months of fall. But just as important, been able to get a chance to know the staff through David and others. Really, it's a wonderful and incredible team. And gain an appreciation of the city through meetings with Chief Masso and Tiffany Chu, Chief of Staff. Learned that there's many stakeholders, lots of different meetings with different affiliate members, board members, even the MFA board, and it's truly been a wonderful experience. And just in closing, looking ahead, many opportunities. We'll hear more about the strategic plan, which will be priority 1, 2, and 3, of course, for this year. And once we have a sense of sort of what we want to do, we want to be thinking about how we want to do it. And so as we think about developing that vision, we'll have a chance to relook, take a look at our goal settings, which we've done for this year for David and his leadership team and essentially the BPL. And we'll be taking a look at the committees as well within the Board of Trustees to really have a sense of how we execute with excellence the mission of this great institution. So with that, just want to say thank you very much. I also wanted to congratulate Portia for, I believe, getting married in the last few months. Is that correct, to Crystal? Thank you very much. Best wishes. I believe with that, I wanted to introduce our new trustees, one of which who is here, one of which cannot make it for his annual meeting. Just very briefly, Jonathan Levine is, as you can see, chair of Bain Capital. I had a chance to meet with him a few weeks ago. He's incredibly passionate about philanthropy, as well as our mission. He's probably one of the few people from his office you can look straight down onto the BPL every single day. So he absolutely appreciates what we do, and quite frankly, a lot of what is to be done, specifically around the McKim transformation. Brings a wealth of experience you can see in his background. I think one thing that's interesting is that he is chair emeritus at the Columbia Board of Trustees, but his last day was October 6th of last year. So he transitioned into a challenge during a challenging time. And as he says it, when he left, things were fine over at Columbia. But he brings a ton of experience for us, and we're just so incredibly lucky to have him. I think moving on, Julie, I've gotten to know a little bit. We had breakfast the other day. She's an amazing addition to the Board of Trustees, president of the U.S. Business Unit and U.S. Country Head for Takeda Pharmaceutical, a long background in the pharmaceutical industry, but more importantly, or as importantly, a real civic leader. I met her at one of the Boston Magazine's 150 most influential Bostonians and Boston's 50 most influential AAPI leaders in 2023 event. And really, I've heard her speak, and she's just absolutely terrific. Maybe, Julie, just a few words, if that's okay, and just welcoming you to our group.
Thank you for those warm words. It's a real pleasure to be here and a real honor as an immigrant child who spent many of her waking hours in the library. The libraries hold a very, very deep spot in my heart, and so it's a true pleasure to be here, to work with David, the entire staff here at BPL, fellow trustees, to look to see what we can do to continue to make BPL a wonderful institution in the greater Boston area.
Thank you so much, Julie. Look forward to your contributions. Appreciate it. With that,
If
yes,
I could also, I'm sorry, could I
please.
please just make a reminder that this meeting is being recorded? If anyone wants to sign up for public comment, either on the Zoom, you can do so via the chat by 9 a.m. If you are here in Rob Hall, please sign up on the clipboards that are at the entrance by 9 a.m. You'll be called in the order you are received.
Thank you, Pamela. Appreciate it. With that, next agenda item, I will pass it on to the President's report to David.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as I think the trustees are well aware, continuing to hire incredible people across all levels of the organization remains one of our privileges and opportunities. And as we do, I am happy to introduce to you three additional individuals who are running key areas of the library now and who you may interact with in the course of their work. And so I am presenting to you Judah Hammer, our new Human Resources and Labor Relations Manager, Nicole Santiago, Manager of Research Services, and Audrey Wynn, our Legal Liaison and Policy Advisor. And so welcome to all three of you, and perhaps you would say a sentence or two just in greeting to the trustees about yourself.
Good morning. My name's Judah Hamer. It's great to meet all of you, and I'm really thrilled to be completing nearly my second month here at BPL. I come out of HR and operations the past 4 years in advertising in corporate, and prior to that, I have spent 31 years in mostly public libraries. 20 of those years was also doing a second gig teaching for Rutgers University. I spent a considerable amount of my time in suburban and rural libraries as a director, and I started as a child with many hours in the public library working, shelving books. I did facilities through college. I've worked the circulation desk, clerical, children's librarianship, reference. I was not very good at reference. And I always say my heart is still a little bit in the children's room and behind the circulation desk because I enjoy direct contact with our public. I consider our own staff, inclusive of you all as volunteers in your roles, as the clients of HR, and I'm pleased to serve you.
Thank you so much.
Hi, good morning. Nicole Santiago. As the inaugural Manager of Research Services, I am tasked with integrating special collections public service and research services to offer a more seamless and optimal research experience to our patrons, both in person and online, and to get the public more engaged with both research and special collections. I'm a dual report, so I report to the Director of Research and Special Collections and the Manager of the Central Library, and I provide direct leadership to the Special Collections Public Service Supervisor and the Team Lead for Research Services. So these are two people who are conduits for the expertise held by many librarians, archivists, curators, and library assistants who connect the public with their collections. So I've worked at a lot of different institutions on both coasts, both public universities, community, college libraries, and archives. Most recently at the Harvard Graduate School of Design, serving as research, teaching, and writing services librarian. In addition to studying library science, I also have a Master of Science from UC Berkeley, where I studied architectural history. So I'm really thinking about the spatial aspect of public service and the collection management that makes it possible and what that looks like in the historic McKim building. I'm also the secretary on the executive board of the Art Library Society of North America, so I'm familiar with this environment, and I was in a recent cohort of the Association of Research Libraries Leadership and Career Development Program for historically underrepresented librarians. Thank you to the trustees for making time for me this morning. I'm really excited to be here.
Good morning, I'm Audrey Nguyen. I'm the new Legal Liaison and Policy Advisor here at the library. Prior to joining the library, my background was in education and disability legal services here in Boston. I also, once upon a time, was a classroom teacher. So all of the values of the library are shared by me both personally and professionally. One part of my role is to liaise with City Hall, but the other part is to make sure that the policies here at the library are accessible, both easy to read, but accessible to patrons, that they are compliant with regulation, but also that they reflect the values of our library community and our institution as well. Thank you.
And I would just note that two of our presenters this morning are in new roles or new iterations of their roles. And so I think it expresses a commitment by the library to this work and to uplift the specific skill sets that will help us serve our patrons better. And of course, we would not be successful without a strong HR and labor relations manager, given that our staff are our biggest resource in many, many ways.
Thank you.
Thank you all. We have the privilege from time to time of entertaining very special ways of recognizing individuals who have contributed to their communities. We have two proposals before the trustees this morning. And the first relates to the renaming proposal of the mezzanine community room at the Grove Hall branch. And on behalf of the Grove Hall Friends, we have representation from the Grove Hall branch librarian. Celia, good morning. Nice to have you here. I understand you'll be presenting on behalf of the Friends this morning.
Hi, my name's Celia. I'm the Grove Hall branch librarian, and I am here on behalf of our Friends group who unfortunately couldn't make it this morning. I'm here to request the approval of the Board of Trustees to honor Mimi Jones, community member, by naming the community room on the second floor of the library the Mimi Jones Community Room. We believe this would be a fitting way to acknowledge and thank Mimi for the significant contribution she has made to the library and to the Grove Hall community in general. The Friends voted in favor of making this recommendation at a meeting in May. Mimi's commitment to the Grove Hall Branch Library as a welcoming space, free to all, is evident by her activism that has inspired and educated so many. Mimi used her decades of experience as a civil rights activist to build community in Grove Hall and Roxbury. She led series of dialogues and communal readings featuring texts she selected by Black authors and activists. In 2018, we screened the documentary film inspired by her activism, Passage at St. Augustine, the 1964 Black Lives Matter movement that transformed America, followed by a Q&A with her and the filmmaker. When we hosted Dr. Cornell West at the branch in 2017, she was there to introduce him. She also assisted and advised on many other library programs. She was a frequent patron, and she was adored by other patrons, the community, and the staff. Since Mimi's passing in 2020, we think of her often and would love to honor her with the renaming of Grove Hall's mezzanine conference room. We hope that the Board of Trustees will vote in favor of this change. All criteria has been met. This change has been approved by City Council, Mayor Wu, and BPL President David Leonard. Thank you.
All of the documents that she referenced are in your meeting materials.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments?
I just want to make a comment. Get this closer. I just want to say Mimi was a partner to me. When I first started, one of my first assignments was to be the chair of the Fellows Athenaeum Trust, and I'll talk about it a little bit later. And she was one of the community members in the committee, and she served in that committee for many years. She was my eyes to the community. She was the one who guided me when things got heated. She was the calm in the room. She is an amazing person. I don't know if you know, there was an incident. She was a teen, right? She was a teen when, I don't know, you've probably seen this in papers, history, when it's talk about racism here in the States. She was one of the kids in the pool at this hotel when the hotel manager was pouring acid into the pool to get the kids out. And she was one of the kids in the pool. She was amazing. I highly recommend and I appreciate Grove Hall. I was asking David, I'm like, Grove Hall? Why Grove Hall? She was so much involved in Roxbury, but I guess she was involved in Bury both. So amazing human being. She was a dear partner to me. Highly recommend this vote as well.
If I can say, just process-wise, thank you very much for all of that. We do have a naming policy. I just want to emphasize, especially for Julie and other members, that was adopted last year, 5 criteria essentially. The individual has made substantive contributions to the community of the named branch. The recommendation of the mayor of Boston, a favorable vote of Boston City Council, favorable recommendations of the Friends, and favorable recommendation of the president of the BPL. And that comes up to the trustees for our approval. So at least from my point of view, 5 out of 5.
No question. The policy actually does go back further, but it was refreshed for certain purposes about a year ago. And I had the privilege of getting to know Mimi a little bit during my early years here at the library. She was a force of nature, an incredible advocate, and the more I got to know her, I would learn a little bit more about her history and her contributions to society. And so, yes, I formally have a role in the approval process, but this and the next proposal I couldn't more forcefully endorse.
So if there's no more comments, then I'll call for a vote that the trustees of the Public Library of the City of Boston approve the proposal to rename the mezzanine community room at the Grove Hall branch of Mimi Jones, at the Grove Hall branch, the Mimi Jones Community Room.
So moved.
Second? Second. Great. All in favor? Aye. Great. So passed.
Thank you.
Thank you, trustees, and thank you to Celia and to the Friends for bringing this nomination forward. Thank you for your advocacy and your work. We have now the unusual privilege of having a second proposal at the same meeting to recognize the contributions of our late colleague, Barbara Rhodes, children's librarian at the Jamaica Plain branch. And the group bringing the proposal forward are the Friends of the Jamaica Plain branch, represented here by Don Haber. Don, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, trustees. As David said, my name is Don Haber, and I am president and co-chair of the Friends of the Jamaica Plain branch, which was organized in 1952 and is the oldest Friends group in the Boston Public Library system. I'm here to ask you to approve our request to name the children's room at the Jamaica Plain branch after Barbara Rhodes. Barbara Rhodes was a children's librarian for over 40 years at the Boston Public Library, and she spent more than 30 of those years as the beloved children's librarian at the Jamaica Plain branch. Simply put, Barbara brought a love of books and stories to children and their families. She impacted innumerable lives through her work, her generosity, and her unwavering curiosity about the world. Barbara inspired a deep love of reading and literacy in a diverse community comprising thousands of young scholars. And most importantly, she dedicated her time to building personal relationships with the children and parents who entered the children's room, making it a fun, engaging, and educational destination for all. Just last year, Barbara was recognized for her contributions to the City of Boston as the recipient of a much-deserved Shattuck Public Service Award for her 4 decades of service. Earlier this year, when we learned that Barbara had entered hospice care, the Friends of the Jamaica Plain branch, along with Barbara's neighbors and friends in the greater Jamaica Plain community, decided that we wanted to honor her life and carry on her legacy in 2 ways. First, by naming the children's room in her honor, and second, by creating an endowment fund to provide a funding source in perpetuity for children's books, crafts, and programming for future generations of neighborhood children. After meeting with Paula Seke at the BPL Fund, we found out that there had never before been a grassroots, community-funded endowment within the BPL Fund. We discovered that the minimum amount required to create an endowment was $50,000, and that we would have 5 years to reach that $50,000 goal. $50,000 is a sizable amount for a small group to raise. It's several times more than our Friends group raises in an entire year. In spite of those challenges, 4 months ago, a dedicated group of Barbara's friends and neighbors, along with the Friends of the Jamaica Plain branch, began our fundraising efforts. We have received an outpouring of support and donations from more than 185 donors, with gifts ranging from $15 to $5,000. It has truly been a community effort. I am thrilled to be able to announce today that just 4 months after we began raising funds, we have met our $50,000 goal. And we will be establishing the Barbara Rhodes Children's Endowment Fund for the Jamaica Plain branch. The speed with which we attained our fundraising goal is a testament to the tremendous impact that Barbara had on the children and families of Jamaica Plain. I also want to thank Paula Seke and the BPL Fund staff for their help and support during the process. In closing, I believe that the Jamaica Plain community, the Boston Public Library, and the City of Boston owe much gratitude to Barbara for her good works and years of dedicated service to the children of Boston. In recognition of her contributions, I ask you to honor her by naming the children's room at the Jamaica Plain branch the Barbara Rhodes Children's Room. And I just want to say, I've left some bookmarks if anyone's interested. They have one of Barbara's favorite quotes on them and a way to donate on the back. And it says, "What do we live for if it is not to make life less difficult for each other?" Thank you.
Thank you, Don, and thank you to the Friends for bringing this forward and for your fundraising partnership and advocacy. I would simply add that this is supported by the staff at the branch, and Michael, I, and others recently attended the Celebration of Life for Barbara, which was an incredibly moving experience, where I personally learned of how much she had touched so many of the other children's librarians at the BPL. And so we are really moved to see this proposal come forward. Thank you.
All required documents have been submitted and they are in your meeting materials.
Inclusive of a resolution from the City Council as well as support from Mayor Wu. So thank you. Any comments?
Sorry, me again.
Please.
Dawn, I just want to say thank you. I mean, I've known Dawn since I've been in this board. Incredible community activist, especially supporter of the library. Very impressive, only 4 months to raise that amount of money within the community. Thank you so much for giving us, Emily and I, more work to manage the but thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Evelyn.
Additional comments before I call for a vote that the trustees of the Public Library of the City of Boston approve the proposal to rename the children's room at the Jamaica Plain branch the Barbara Rhodes Children's Room. Do I hear a motion to vote? So moved. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Right. So passed.
Thank you, trustees.
I will now continue with the more mundane matters of the President's report. I continue to both allude and explicitly reference our vacancy challenges, and I want to report the current status as of last Friday, which is that we are working through about 51 active vacancies with a staff body at about 390. That's about 12%, 12 to 14% of our staff. We continue to hire. We continue to see a number of retirements and departures, and just a brief analysis here of where are these vacancies. There are 2 exempt positions, 14 PSA members, and 35 ASME members that are vacancies right now. There'll be future members when hired, and they're spread across our branches, library services, few in special collections still, and the operations and facilities teams. So just want to give you that context as part of the backdrop to all that we do and the challenges that we have ahead. I was also asked to report on our safety and security challenges of the last several months. Certainly over the summer, and then more recently during earlier this month in September, we have seen an uptick in difficult behavior, particularly at the exterior of the Central Library. In many cases, this is the result of becoming a gathering point for many individuals who we believe to be unhoused or suffering from a range of social and behavioral challenges, mental health issues, and so on and so forth. However, the recent activity crossed the line into violent and criminal activity at a level that it had not happened before. One incident in particular was reported in the press where two male individuals were having an altercation on Exeter Street and then proceeded inside the building into the Newsfeed Cafe space, one of them with a hatchet or small axe and the other with a knife. Staff reacted, both the TCA staff and library staff and security reacted immediately. Police were called, the incident was dealt with, people were arrested. That same day, that was one of 3 violent incidents in that vicinity. At one point, we had 13 responding BPD officers responding to incidents at the library. We've also had examples of either assault on facility staff or attempted assault over the course of the summer. And so your next question will rightly be, well, what are we doing about this? And we had already in late summer instituted a practice where any of our staff doing maintenance on the exterior of the building would be accompanied by our security team, just to act as a deterrent. And there would also be a means to contact BPD, call 911 if necessary. We also have moved to, since the more violent incidents at the start of this month, a zero tolerance policy with respect to compliance with our appropriate use policy as it pertains to the outside of the building. We're not at 100% compliance, but this was done in partnership with our colleagues, Pine Street Inn, and other agencies who respond to people in desperate need across the city. We have to keep the environment safe in order to even serve the people who need us. And so while we continue to lead with compassion, with the offers of service and with offers of information, we also have to keep the environment safe for our staff, for all our patrons, and for those who might be requiring those specialized services. So I believe we have seen improvements, and I'm confident that we'll be able to hold the line at this point. We're in the process of adding security staff to do external patrols, which we have never had to do other than on an occasional basis. And so I needed to report on this to you, the trustees, to indicate we have had serious incidents and also to report on the steps that we have taken. We do have the support of the city with respect to these measures, and this was a balanced approach between compassion and offers of service, but on the other hand, also prioritizing safety and security.
David, can I go back just to the your report about vacancies?
Sure.
12%. What is that sort of a typical number for vacancies, and kind of can you give us a little bit more context, sort of for sort of turnover and typical tenure in some of these positions? And is this affecting operations?
It's absolutely affecting operations. It is down from its high points that we have seen since recovering from the core COVID period, but we have continued to see a larger number of retirements or individuals making quality of life choices in their career, either to move out of the city of Boston. We do have a residency requirement here, which applies to all exempt staff and to both members of both unions for the first 10 years of their tenure here. Often those staff members who are in the earlier stages of their career, therefore making less money perhaps. And so at the very time they have less resources in their own revenue stream, it's the one time where you have to live in Boston and deal with the cost of living here. So that is a real challenge. And we have thought prior to COVID that given the size of our staff, having about 30 vacancies is the right metric to strive for. That is lower than many of our peers in government. So I'm still unhappy with 51. I want us to be closer to 30, but 30 may not be the new normal that we need to be dealing with. However, if that's true, then we need to have measures in place, either increases in our overtime budget to cover vacancies and gaps in our staffing levels at branches and across the system. So all of this is interrelated. I'd be happy at a later meeting to give you more trend analysis, and which I'm not prepared to do today.
No, that's fine, and that would be helpful, and I'm not expecting a detailed analysis today, but I do think that 12% number I think you referenced is pretty high, and you talked about the security concerns and safety concerns. I mean, it has a direct impact on that, as well as servicing our patrons, so it would be helpful to maybe drill down a little bit more on that.
David, I want to echo what you were saying. Last week at Simmons, I had a wine and cheese with the library grad students. And I was saying, you really need to apply to BPL for jobs. We need you there. But the concerns you say about affordability and housing came up.
Yeah, and we heard that from our colleagues in both unions as well. So we acknowledge that it is a real challenge. I have certainly conveyed that to city leadership, that this is a barrier that they share as well in terms of hiring, particularly for entry-level positions across all departments.
Going to just go back to the safety and security update, which we were talking about, and at least for the record, just comment that while certainly troubling, and we understand the context of the city's social dynamics, I know I speak for the entire Board of Trustees in supporting the actions and the safety for both the staff and the patrons. And if there's anything that the trustees can do to support this further, please do let us know.
Thank you for that. I do think, to the extent that trustees have opportunities to visit with frontline staff, either here at Central or in branches, and just acknowledge the work that they are doing. Both our security staff and our full-time and part-time employees of the library, and that these are difficult jobs at this time. Thank you. You have in your packets the document which is referred to as the MD&A document, the Management Discussion and Analysis document. That serves two purposes. It is a feed to the audit report, which we'll get to in a minute. It also serves as by way of an annual report in terms of our activities and our service level goals throughout the year. I have a few slides which I will run through very briefly because you have the materials in your packet, and there are more substantive well, these are substantive, but there are items which may require more conversation that I would want to leave time for. So again, we're centering our hiring and our hiring challenges, and also what we were able to do over the course of the year was to extend our Saturday hours in branches to 9 to 5 in all but 2 locations, one of which we have just added, which is Upham's Corner. And so the remaining branch that does not have Saturday hours is our Chinatown branch, which is still a temporary location. We also want to acknowledge that this is not work we do alone, but we do with work very broadly supported by the BPL fund. We heard the partnership earlier in the agenda, but equally we receive substantial support from the associates of the Boston Public Library for special collections. As you will hear in a moment, strategic planning is the principal activity at the strategic level. We will get to that in a moment. We have our consultants present to give you a brief update, not a deep dive on where we are and where we're going next. Next slide, please. Branches, very strong year, extended hours, amazing Catalyst Grant program supported by the BPL Fund to support programming across all the branches. And of course, the highlight in February was the reopening of the Faneuil branch in Oak Square. Next slide, please. I told you I'd go quickly, but youth engagement remains a strong priority within the Library Services Division. We have a new acting or interim Chief of Youth and Family Engagement as we iterate the role and leadership there, which Angela Vizaga, our former Director of Strategic Partnerships, is filling, herself having been a children's librarian. The incumbent, Farouk Abizaid, is moving to a new role here at the library to focus on our historical children's literature. We have a revitalized partnership with BPS, which we continue to build on, and we also have a wonderful new children's writer in residence program in partnership with the associates. There's a reception coming up soon. That the individual there has an amazing heritage and background to bring to that work. Next slide, please. Civic literacy and intellectual freedom. This is the start of Banned Books Week. I caught myself saying that we were celebrating Banned Book Week last night at a program, but it is a way to mark the importance of intellectual freedom and the access to materials. Through our Books Unbanned program, we now have over 6,000 registered 13 to 26-year-olds from all across the country who are not able to access this material in their localities and have signed up for a BPL e-card, again supported by the BPL Fund. Next slide, please. This particular slide covers a multitude. I cannot do justice to all of the programs really, but three highlights include the Browsborough Board program, where you can now gain access to the BPL's collection statewide at transit stops by scanning a QR code. Amazing work within our special research collections. We met Nicole earlier, who'll be helping bring much of that alive in new ways to our public, and a host of new strategy being built within our digital services area also. We will probably do deep dives on many of those topics in the course of the year. Next slide, please. Capital improvements, and the slide on the left has our work in 24 and almost the same list for our ongoing work in 25, the current year. We are zeroing in on a close date for the Fields Corner branch to go into construction. Other active projects include Chinatown, Uphams, and West End, as well as the Eggleston Square South End projects, and two related projects at the Central Library, both the fire alarm system project, which goes throughout the McKim building, as well as the next phase of prep for the McKim transformation and renovation project. Next slide, please. Throughout all of this work is our support for our patrons. As a bookend to my earlier comments about safety and security, I do not want to lose sight of the incredible work that we're doing for this population, where we tracked over 5,000 individual interactions with individuals believed to be housing insecure. We had 3 social work interns from Simmons University, and they have scheduled about 300 appointments. So this work continues. We are continuing to bring a trauma-informed approach to our institutional work. That is not something you can shift to overnight, but it is certainly a journey, requires new skills, new training, new support systems, but it is what the moment calls for. Next slide, please. I'm almost at the end. Workforce development and economic empowerment. We declared this as one of our top priority areas coming out of the COVID period to help the working population recover from the challenges of that time. You see a smattering of options here, and this work also continues. And now I am thrilled to just inform you on the next slide that the Boston Municipal Research Bureau that manages the Shattuck Award process has selected our very own special library assistant at the Roxbury branch in Nubian Square, Tracy Wiggins, to be this year's honoree. So congratulations to Tracy. We will send that information to you all. And if you don't know Tracy, please get to know Tracy. She's an incredible individual. So at this point, that completes my report. Happy to take quick questions before I pass it back to the chair and to Christian for strategic planning.
Hey, David, since this is a neighborhood kind of issue for the library in the Back Bay with security, has there been any opportunity to leverage other organizations to help? Because it does affect a lot of the businesses, hotels, and have we seen someone helping us with the burden?
Yeah, so at the service level, Pine Street Inn, the Women's Lunch Place, Boston Boston Healthcare for the Homeless, a few other organizations like that are deeply engaged in the work. In terms of partnering in the Back Bay neighborhood, both the Neighborhood Association of Back Bay, the Residents Association, as well as the Back Bay Association, which is the business association, deeply involved in these topics, more from an advocacy point of view and engaging with the city of Boston. I would note, too, that this is not unique to this neighborhood or even this spot, but is a pattern being seen across the city. There's probably more analysis than we have time for to try and explain that. And at a macro level, we know that the statistics show that Boston is very safe overall, and violent crime incidents overall are down. But with respect to specific hotspots and specific population challenges, it doesn't matter what the stats tell you if you're the person in the middle of an incident that's ongoing.
Additional questions for David? Maybe just a quick comment. I mean, kudos to you and the entire team, the staff, your leadership group for FY24 accomplishments. Incredible. So many takeaways. I guess one through line that I see that connects the dots with the city's values is affordable housing, and I saw a bit of that go through in terms of both the Chinatown branch, working with housing insecure individuals, and of course the economic and workforce development all sort of play into that. So I really like that connection with sort of, I know, one of the top 3 priorities for Mayor Wu. Terrific.
Thank you. I concur that there is a macro level contribution we can make, but the reality on the ground is also one that we must deal with at the micro level. And I think during the difficult times of late summer and early this month, it was an all hands on deck kind of situation. And just kudos to many of our team who just stepped in, maybe went beyond their own job descriptions to be supportive of staff colleagues, to help with improvements to the exterior, both on our security team. And so in particular, I think Ali Sacco, Anna Faye Flynn, Central Library Manager, and Pamela Carver, Jill Menakis, all jumped in even above their own job descriptions to ensure that we could be the type of institution that we want to be for everybody. But just as there are rules for how you engage with the library inside, how you check out books, those rules apply to our exterior as well.
I'm going to turn things over, thank you very much, turn things over to Christian to discuss strategic planning with just a quick tee up as I know the rest of the board members consider strategic planning as one of the most important activities of any board, for-profit or nonprofit. Essentially, any board is responsible for many things, but at its essence, 2 things. We think about sort of 1, guiding, supporting the leader, the president, the CEO of the organization, and 2, setting strategy and being accountable for the strategy of any organization. So with that tee up in mind, I want to pass the baton to Christian, who has been an incredible leader of this process on behalf of the Board of Trustees.
Thank you very much, Ray, and good morning, everyone. We're very pleased to welcome our friends Erin and Patricia from Gensler to share some updates on the strategic planning process. I'll just provide a few quick observations. This update is really meant to be just that. It's a brief update. We would welcome the additional input engagement of the board and of staff. As many are aware, this has been a rich collaborative process that has really involved many, many different staff and stakeholder sessions since the RFP process last summer. We're so grateful for the input that staff have provided and the perspectives that have been shared with us. And what we hope to do today is really just provide some thoughts generally on the value, vision, and mission that we think are coming as something that we think should be emphasized and will hopefully resonate broadly with the BPL. We'll talk about some of the messaging that we think is accordant to that, and we'll also highlight some of the strategic initiatives that we're beginning to think about. But I would say that, again, that there's more work to be done, that we would really welcome the involvement and engagement of everyone as we look to bring a more granular approach to the strategic initiatives that we will be advocating for and prioritizing, because that really will be key at the end of the day as part of the strategic planning process, to articulate with clarity what we think we ought to be doing and what we think we ought not to be doing. So with that, I will hand it over to Erin and Patricia.
Thank you. Thank you, Christian. I'm Patricia Novre. I'm joined by Erin Corcoran. We're with Gensler, a design and strategies firm. And it's been a real privilege to work with all of you, staff and team, to think how to deliver a plan that has the clarity that will be able to guide the future forward. So share a little bit of where we're at.
Sounds good, and we'll keep it to the brief update that we've heard a couple times as well. So we shared in the pre-read materials our current draft. If you were flipping through those pieces, we've just got a few selections to go through during the meeting today, and there's some notes on sort of which parts are a little more settled versus which parts are more in progress. We had a wonderful full-day workshop with staff and leadership yesterday in the library. I think we kicked off with, it's been a 9-month process. We've been engaging with stakeholders across staff, leadership. The Strategic Planning Committee has been a key stakeholder as well, and we're meeting with them on Monday, as well as community partners via both in-person interactions as well as surveying both to the community and to staff members. With September brings back to school and also finalizing the last pieces of the document. The pieces that we will flip through today, again, are more around the mission, vision, and core value, as well as some of the roles that the library will serve in the future. But to Christian's point, the remaining work is around implementation, prioritization, and continued discussions around initiatives that are happening via the workshops both this week and next week. So to go through some of the selections today, obviously values, mission, and vision has been a discussion that has been happening for a number of months. These are selections from the final document that also define what these mean. So values are the principles that will guide how we work. Vision is envisioning where we want to go, and mission is sort of how we do it, our purpose, and why we exist. Currently, we are leading with our value. Our core value through both staff surveys, interactions, we discussed a myriad of values with all of these stakeholder groups, but ultimately what continued to rise to the fore was the concept of free to all, as far as where our history begins, but also how we can evolve that statement going towards the future. So we begin the strategic plan with this in mind, both speaking to that history, but also how this can continue to guide us, and also how it can continue to evolve. So on the right-hand side, you're also seeing that this is no longer just the concept of a free book. It's being free to imagine, free to explore, free to choose, to think, to be free to all for all, connected to both Boston, the Commonwealth, and our digital footprint, as mentioned with the banned books, well beyond the walls of the Commonwealth. Following that, this is the current iteration of the vision and mission. Our vision that we are creating an inclusive community propelled by curiosity, connection, and growth. And mission that we are opening up a world of discovery to enrich lives and elevate every community. There's a lot of inclusion language that has come up through the discussions with the stakeholder groups, as well as the concept of discovery and how do we lead with that, both as libraries, but also where people come to learn, to connect as communities.
Then we start getting into the roles and initiatives. So mission, vision, and the core value are driving our overall principles. The roles are how we will live those values into the world. As David mentioned in the workshop yesterday, the current state of the strategic plan is we are trying on these roles as different outfits that we will live into the future. And a lot of the work we're doing both this week and next is sort of prototyping, running through this. Does this contain everything that we need to be in the future? But the roles are really the role we play in our communities, and within each of those roles are the initiatives of how we will make this happen. Currently, our 4 roles are what's up on the screen. It's weird having to look up so high, but in general, the 4 roles that we're seeing for the future are lifelong learning and research partner, this core of inspiring that love of literacy, discovery, and scholarly exploration in its myriad forms within both the collections, research, and special collections roles. That we are creating places that are welcoming destinations, that are active, inclusive third places where every person can chart their own path is a little bit more speaking to the place versus the role as research and learning. Trusted resource has been a discussion along the past 9 months as far as what is our role in connecting to partners, but also connecting people to reliable information as a trusted source of information. So those dual aspects of being a resource that both helps people connect to things that they need, but also is a place that you know that has truth and reliable information. And then community engager is about expanding beyond the edges of our library, beyond the physical walls, meeting communities where they are, and really seeing this as an emerging role for the future. There's been a lot of discussions within the stakeholder groups as far as how important this role is for the future of BPL, understanding that its reach is far beyond the library itself. And then I'll just do a quick flip. There's a longer version of this contained within the pre-read, but note a draft. We're doing a lot of discussions around these in this week and next week. But in general, each one of these roles will contain both its definitions, what it's trying to achieve in its goals, as well as the initiatives linked to living these pieces. So again, I'll just flip through these. And then the part, the landing the plane that we are currently within. This, obviously, there is an implementation, a prioritization piece, and sort of where do we start conversation that is currently on the boards. The last chapter of the document, this is just the header, will contain sort of an overview of where to start, as well as the linked organizational shifts to the initiatives on the board. So to live the roles externally and meet the initiatives going forward, there's also some internal organizational work to support those initiatives, and the conversations that we had yesterday and going into next week are speaking to, if we're starting here for prioritizing these pieces, what are the organizational supports that will lead into these future goals? We've also been doing, as a team alongside Margaret Sullivan Studios, some benchmarking around communications, funding, how we compare to peer institutions that will also inform some of the implementation strategies. So again, a sneak peek of the promise of that chapter, which will be emerging into early October in the coming weeks.
Erin, if I could just add one comment here. It might be helpful for people to understand in slightly more detail what we're envisioning here by implementation strategies. As I understand it, these are strategies that would need to dovetail with one or more of the strategic roles that you identified earlier. Could you give us maybe a sense of roughly what we would expect in terms of the number of implementation strategies, or are we envisioning 10 or 15 initiatives that we would think of undertaking, and then we would prioritize them? What should people be expecting here? Because as I think about this is one of the most exciting parts of the plan. This is really, in a more granular way, about what we think we should be doing and what we think we should maybe not doing or prioritizing less. So can you just give us a little bit more of a preview as to what this would ultimately look like?
So long as you don't hold me to my verbal response in the final document. But in general, both an overall approach to implementation, like what is needed to get us where we want to go, but to your point as well, here's our master list of initiatives and where we start. I think we had a very robust discussion yesterday as far as all of the initiatives sound great, but what are the enablers that lead into the later work? So some of, again, without speaking too much, the workshop tomorrow, the one on Monday, taking a look at that master list, having a critical eye to what do we have that's in most alignment with the plan, and what is our capacity to support those as a way to bring that together. But back to your question, within the chapter itself, an overall approach, the master list of potential initiatives, but also where we start. What are the marquee items that will fit most with the plan that should be considered first? What are the enablers that will support later initiatives that need to be started immediately in a sort of year 1, year 5, year 10 type of ranking?
Yeah, that's very helpful because for me, I think one of the things that really resonates is the idea that if we're asked about the plan and what it's meant to do, that we could be able to identify concrete things that we think are going to be done differently as a result of the plan, and I think this work is key to that.
If I can add, because it's fresh in my mind from yesterday, like if we take the welcoming destination role, one easy initiative that one can relate to is implementing multilingual signage and welcoming language across the system is one initiative that we considered under that. So for each of these 4 roles, the question has become, what are the initiatives that will make us fully able to inhabit this role? Welcoming destination, lifelong partner, trusted resource. And are there initiatives that are so core to who we are and what we do every day that they must live under one of these roles? So it's kind of those two questions. Now, the interesting thing is that we reviewed, almost 50 potential initiatives. The idea of having 50 priorities is a little bit alarming. And so I think that's what this next piece of work is. Like the one I just referenced, there are 49 others or so. And A, they can't all be top priorities, and B, we don't have the resources or staff to do all of them either, yet, maybe. So that's kind of, I think, the characteristic of this next phase. Now that I hope mission, values, vision, loosely set, maybe there's a little literacy word or knowledge pursuit word that needs to creep in, but loosely set. These 4 roles, very close.
Why do you always look at me when you say that?
Oh, was that something from an earlier comment that we got? Yeah. So some of the language, I think it's still fair to say, is still in development because both some of our trustees and some of our staff want to keep wordsmithing a little bit to make sure it's as close to perfect as possible. But I think as these higher level roles, mission, vision, values are getting close to set, then the real meat and work is the initiatives that get enabled, the prioritization that must happen, which we'll have to do together, and then the resource needs that will be required, whether it comes from the city or the fund or other sources, and also I think what is a year 1, year 2, year 3 priority as well. So we don't try to do everything all at once.
And David, maybe
No, really quickly. I guess with a strategic plan, there are some things that you're doing already, and you're doing well. And I guess when I think of strategic plans, what's that strategic differentiator going forward? Because, and this is really good, but it's a lot of execution of things that we're doing. And is that really strategic, saying, oh, we're just going to get better at it? Or what is that kind of end game of why we want a strategic plan? What's going to differentiate the BPL better than it's ever been before? How do you take it to that next level? So that's kind of, I see some execution here, and and I guess I'm more on the question of strategic. Like,
Yeah,
is that-
100%, John. I think David's comments were very helpful. I think Aaron also mentioned this notion of marquee initiatives. For me, at least, this process is not a success unless we have some genuinely new ideas that come out of it that are not just simply fine-tuning existing things. So I suspect as we develop the initiatives that we will see some things like that, some marquee initiatives that we're not currently doing, which we think we could do and would be really exciting catalysts. But let me know if I'm not stating that correctly.
You want to make sure it's inspiring.
Correct.
And dare we say bold, I think is the word that we've been
It
tossing
sounds
around.
like he's also saying world-class, and this, we're already great, so how do we create the next era of that continuous cycles of good to great?
Agreed.
So this was more of a process question, maybe for you, David, than for the Gensler team. And that's, how does this dovetail into the budgeting? Part of the pack for today was the annual, the audit report.
Yeah.
And since I'm new, so maybe this is a naive question, but clearly this is going to require, especially if there are some significant marquee initiatives, the budgeting behind it to support it. So how does this work dovetail with the budgeting process for BPL?
Yeah, so the strategic planning work loosely started in February and is scheduled, all going well, to complete in November. At least the level of the plan itself. Some of the implementation work will still be building beyond that date. Our annual budget runs July to June, but we begin planning our asks and needs for the following fiscal year, which will start next July. We begin that work November through January. So that's why we can't really have a delay in completing this process without losing a whole year. I mean, I'm a little bit of hyperbole, but nonetheless, it's very important that our budget asks for next fiscal year be informed by the prioritized initiatives that we will be at some point asking you for more input into and more sign off, so that if we're deciding, that the most inspirational thing is building an improved culture of staff service philosophy. I don't know that that's what it will be, but that is front and center in a way that allows us to be aligned with our asks to the city, our expected uses of our state funding next year, our prioritization exercise that we do with the Boston Public Library Fund as our philanthropic arm. And with other parties that bring revenue to the table.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think implicit what you're saying, David, is that there are certain things we want to do for which we don't currently have the staffing or the resources, and we're not necessarily going to look for the city to do that. We might rely on external sources of funding. And so I think being sufficiently granular about which initiatives will be contingent on that sort of financing is going to be important.
Can I just sort of follow up on Julie's question and that comment? So are we, in the course of this, given the fact that we're in particular essentially public entity, living in certain times and recognizing that we, probably have minimal flexibility, at least in terms of public funding of these initiatives, is the end result of this going to set priorities that will then give the management team some guidance that from the board's perspective, we think these items should be prioritized in the budget or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I welcome David's thoughts. I think it probably depends on the extent to which an initiative is more of an operational refinement, in which case it probably comes out of the operating budget that the city underwrites and provides. If it's a marquee moonshot initiative that, for which we don't currently have the staffing, if we want to, for example, create a new Treasures of the Boston Public Library wing akin to what they have in New York, we don't have the funding for that, we don't have the staffing for that, and we're not expecting to ask the city for it in any significant fashion, then I think that's just different, right? It's probably contingent on getting external financing to to do that. But I don't think we should not include those things as part of the.
I agree. I was just going to say, are we going to get into that? Are we going to, as we as a board approve the plan in the end, are we factoring in these financial and budget issues?
I think we must, because otherwise they become unfunded mandates or paper ideas that live only on a shelf. That's a failed strategic plan as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
We may not be able to commit to every single thing that requires new funding, that it will happen in year 1 or year 2, but it may require us to say, this thing is so important that we will need more funding, so the tactical implementation is, let's go get more funding for it before it can actually happen. But we need to be realistic about how that follows. We heard in the earlier discussion about the constraints around our staff capacity to do things as they are. But there may be a mix of priorities. They may all be important, but maybe not all resourced at the exact same level. Like we have one media literacy specialist librarian, for example, but we have 4 or 5 people in our programs team. So we can resource things differently. It doesn't mean that anything is less important necessarily, although resources speak volumes. But it doesn't mean it's not a do nothing or do something. The level at which we commit to do something needs to be part of this as well. And I do think in yesterday's conversation, being clear about what is the foundational year 1, year 2, what is the building out year 2, year 3, and then the scalable and broadest reach of year 4 and year 5. I just took your 3-year plan and moved it over to a 5-year scale, by the way. But I do think there's a pace at which we can do these things. We also do not have insight into, as does anybody, the economic future of a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now. So we have to be tempered by our fiscal reality as well. I think all of that is in the blender right now. But as we come back, we with our colleagues, with Sarah, Lisa, other people's leadership, need to be as transparent regarding these initiatives and their priorities and the resources they will take, so that it can be both realistic, it can take us to a world best-in-class, world status public library, which we believe we are, and be inspirational at the same time. Tall order.
Yeah, no, that's a good response. Thank you.
And I think the way that we've been, even in the conversation yesterday, was framing it through these 2 different lenses. What's the potential for impact and transformation that this initiative has? You rank it in 1 scale. And what's our organizational capacity of delivering on this? And delivering on it. So we're not missing out on presenting this amazing idea that we have no organizational capacity currently to deliver on, but we still want to keep that there, or other things that we say we have the capacity for, but they may not be as transformative. So have, I think, more than one axis to evaluate these matrices. Was the activity yesterday with leadership has been a powerful way of not losing sight of both of those dimensions.
Yes, first, I think we'll certainly welcome and solicit this group's continued input, and I think there'll be some exciting charts in the final iteration of this.
That's right.
Yeah, and by the way, this is terrifically laid out, so these are all, so I hope you know this is not a,
No, but we are very much aligned on, let's push it. Let's deliver on something that's bold, that's clear, and that's actionable.
yeah, and
right?
all of us that have done strategic plans over the years, is you don't want it on the shelf.
That's right.
You want things that are attainable and you can fund. And to me, that's the balance of always a strategic plan, is what's the day-to-day, how does that get you better, but then what's that play you create that changes and lets you win? So that's all my piece, but I love the way you're laying it out, so this is terrific.
Great work.
Maybe, I was just gonna say 3 quick comments that I'm hearing as pieces here around the table. So one piece around sort of the initiatives, Christian, right? That's gonna be where the prioritization comes in. I think the board would definitely guide, and we'll talk more about this, differentiating the right level of initiatives versus tactics, right? I don't think the board or this process wants to get into sort of tactical pieces, right? And I see you smiling here. Number 2, you all have heard me say be the broken record of prioritization. So I love hearing sort of the feedback here, and obviously that's a piece of guidance. The third piece, I guess I would say, is as we think about sort of who our stakeholders and who our audience is, and asking sort of what do we actually want, what does this want to be at the end of the day? We think about our patrons, we think about the staff, we think about the trustees, but I think one piece here unspoken is, or perhaps spoken, are the donors, right? And I think that one piece of encouragement is absolutely realism. No one likes unfunded mandates, but we all agree that there's a huge opportunity in the donor pool and the philanthropy pool. We are different, perhaps historically, from other libraries, for better or for worse. We are mainly funded by the city, but that doesn't mean that the donor philanthropy pool can't grow, right? Especially with the McKim transformation, right? And so would encourage us not to be necessarily constrained by sort of current resourcing and understand sort of the boldness that philanthropy could afford us to do moonshot ideas.
Thank you.
And I wouldn't lose sight of the fact that we're already declaring our intent to engage in the transformation and renovation of the McKim building, which needs to check the box around all of these roles: be a welcoming destination, access to trusted resources, engage with lifelong learning partnership opportunities. And part of the feasibility work that we are engaging in already with the Boston Public Library Fund is test the market, if you will, test the appetite in the donor community for some things along the way towards that larger goal. So I believe we are already moving in these directions, even as we continue to refine the plan. It's not quite, build the airplane while in flight, but we don't stop to do strategic planning. The work continues. We have aspirational goals. We want to stay best in class and be the world-class public library that we are. We probably need more resources to do that, which we're happy to do a deeper dive, I think, probably at the next meeting with the trustees to look at how did we score against our benchmark public library institutions across the country. And so I'll just end this section, I think, by saying that we're in the process of developing the next set of meetings with trustees. I think we're going to call an executive committee meeting to which all trustees will be invited in order to do a deeper dive on these topics. The last thing we want to do is be back here in November without having had the opportunity to roll up sleeves while avoiding getting too deep in the weeds, but understanding what are the funding requirements, what are the prioritizations, what are the initiatives under these roles we're committing to.
Agreed.
Fantastic.
Maybe just Karen, the process-wise piece, right? I think we welcome input from everyone in this room, and specifically the trustees. I think 2 or 3 avenues for that, right? So we have the Strategic Planning Committee, which is a subset of the trustees already there. We have the Executive Committee, which is a subset of the trustees, and welcome all the other trustees. Thirdly, welcome input, formally, informally, phone calls, emails to me, Christian, or David at any time, and we can pass that on. Thank you very much, and really appreciate all the hard work.
Thank
It's
you.
been
Thank
really
you all.
impressive.
Thank you.
With that, I will turn things over to Evelyn, our vice chair.
The most exciting part of the meeting. All right, so let's talk numbers. So Finance and Audit met with our auditors. First things to note, there were no material findings in the audit. I'm just going to call out, there's no slides about it, so I'm just going to call it out really quickly. Our net position increased by 4.6 million. That was mostly an increase on city funds, so thank you to the city. And also, we had, in our investments, we also had an increase on how our performance on our funds as well. And in terms of expenses, this is a question from Ray, Emily and team are in the process of doing a budget versus actuals, so I'm not going to be discussing over that. One of the things that I want to see is that, and this came out on the slides, the special events. So special events, it's a revenue that we get year over year. It's all the weddings, all those events that happen, and it's maxed out at 2 million.
So the capacity that we have, so we have plateaued at 2 million for the past couple of years. As you can imagine, with COVID, it just went down to 0 because there were no events, but it has slowly, actually, I was saying rapidly ramped up, and we have plateaued at 2 million with our capacity. There has been an increase of fees. These are, just want to clarify, the library doesn't charge for late fees anymore, but if you do lose a book, you do have to reimburse the library for those. Let's see. Our unassigned fund, this is talking about the general fund. So the unassigned fund balance has trending down. So we had a balance of 146,000, which is low comparison to other years. And let's see, anything else? Emily, anything I missed?
No, I think that's a great recap. Thank you.
Committee, anything else you want to call out?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Oh, no, go ahead, Christian.
I was just going to ask, Evelyn, when you say that we've plateaued or maxed out at $2 million for events because of capacity, does that mean that there's a higher demand and that if we had additional capacity, we could do more events and bring in more revenue? How should we think about that? Because we just had a really nice event here at Rose and Gray. We've done multiple events here. I think there is a demand for the space. It could be, I would have thought, a really nice revenue stream that we could potentially think about resourcing further, but I'm just not sure if I understand what $2 million means.
It means space. It's
Sure.
like,
No, I'm happy to.
there's so many days in a calendar for the space that we have. So it's pretty much booked.
No, I'm happy to address it. Simply based on the calendar and the spaces that we have, the library is really committed to making sure that the private events aren't impacting public service. So we're not going to close public areas to host these private events. There is a fine line of some events are more profitable than others. So if there was a year where we were able to say like, oh no, we're only going to do huge, 300-person weddings, our revenue would increase. The reality is you're not going to find a year that trends in that direction. And I've lost my train of thought. I had something else to add to that. No, I apologize. The other piece, the staffing that works on the event. So we have custodial, we have AV staff, we have event staff here, obviously. They're also doing other things here. So if there's a big festival, if there is, a programming that happens all week long, we can't necessarily then add 200 hours of overtime to their schedule as well. So we do take a look at the overall needs for the week. And there are occasions where we say, okay, like we can only do 2 events that weekend. We can't add on the 3rd and the 4th.
Yeah, that's helpful. I just think if we're looking to be even more present in the community and impactful, we might consider ways of further resourcing. Because I think these events, an event for several hundred people is at least $100,000. They're expensive events that I would have thought are pretty.
Well, and the other thing is, and I forgot to mention this, we're going to have the committee ask that we do some modeling in the terms of McKim will be closed during renovations, right? So there is a campaign for renovations at McKim. Once we close that space, because that's the most popular space, we won't have those events. So then what is the financial impact and for how long that will happen? So that's something that it's on the docket for the team to do.
Is the 2 million by the way gross or net?
That's combined. So there are some expenses that come out of that as well.
Right, okay.
But it's gross.
Question I had as I was reading this stuff over the weekend, on the assets, this sounds like a stupid question, but how do we account for our real estate? Is that's booked to, that's not accounted to on our bottom line, it's accounted to, it's the city's
The
bottom line, is that
library
right?
itself doesn't own any property, physical real estate property. So we have accounted for the value of items that we have within the collections and computers and furniture and whatnot, but not actual physical real estate property.
Okay, so the value of the land and the value of the buildings, we obviously
With
don't
the
book
city.
that.
No. So one thing that I have to note is these audited financials are for the assets that the trustees own. And so, it involves, the trust funds, and just a point of clarification, we used to own buildings. There were a few buildings that the trustees did own, and we have transferred hands either to the city or mostly to the city. So we no longer own any physical buildings or land or property.
That's helpful. I mean, it seems kind of obvious, but it
Yeah.
struck me when I was looking at this stuff.
Any more questions? All right, because the next thing is we need to take a vote. The Finance and Audit Committee recommended for a full vote from the, from the trustees. Once you'll see the I-90s, because those are also, that we need to produce those. And so once those are produced, you will also receive copies of those. So can I get a motion, please, if there's no any more questions?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Any nays? All right, fully passed. All right, I stay on the microphone. So the next is the Fellows Athenaeum Trust, and just going to give a quick brief. The Fellows Athenaeum Trust is a trust that was created very long time ago, in the 1800s. There was, if you recall, libraries were private way in the day, and the Fellows Athenaeum Trust was a trust that was created in the Roxbury community, and they dissolved the trust, and what they decided is to transfer all the assets into the Boston Public Library for the purpose of instructive and literacy purpose over at Roxbury branch only. Little history lesson. There was a lawsuit that was filed from the Roxbury community for misuse of funds. The funds were being used for operational expenses over at Roxbury Library, and they protested. So there was a committee that got created that oversees the expenditure of this fund. We get distributions every year. Distributions are based on an average of a 3-year. Sean, I'm making you proud here. And so we take these distributions annually. We have a committee that are members of the community, also from the branch and the library. Myself as a trustee, looking for a trustee. Anybody who wants to join, more than welcome. We need to replace China Tyler, who was the other trustee in my committee. And we have a cycle of RFP. So we have a project manager. We're going to be in the process of issuing RFP for a new project manager just to follow best practices on, services. And this project manager leads the RFP process. We look out for the community, for specific programs, and we get the programs proposed, and the committee evaluates each program. We decide which ones to fund, and then, fund those programs that get carried out during the year. This year, it was amazing. If we were to approve every single program that we receive, I think it's the year that we had more programs proposed, it would have amounted to over $250,000 in programming. Unfortunately, we don't have that amount of money. Our distribution was, I think was like let me see, it's in your packet here. So we approved 83,000. The total distribution was 133. You're gonna ask, what's the difference? And it's the funding of this project manager, who's a contractor, also comes out from these funds. So in general, we also grant $5,000 to the branch for them to spend on their own programs and specific materials that they may want to fund. To fund for the purpose of this fund. You'll see one of your slides, I'm not gonna read through, but the audience it just varies. It goes from seniors, adults, youth. The most popular programs that have been renewed year over year, it's piano classes. We have free piano lessons. They do concerts, and the kids are amazing. Sewing classes are also very popular. Cooking, we've done that. Yoga, self-help. Concerts. We have a series of concerts. The Makanda concerts are very popular. And also, we added a couple years ago the same man Carlos, who does our piano. He is from the New England Conservatory, and he has brought very diverse concerts to the branch as well that have become very popular. We go through an evaluation process. We evaluate. We don't renew just for the sake of renewing. We make sure that they have the right outreach, that it's serving the community, that the programs are very well carried out. And so just wanted to give you an update. There's nothing for you to vote, but it's just a report on how we spend the money and then how popular the programming has been at the branch. I highly invite you. Here's some examples of what those look like. And I highly invite you to, come and share some of these programs. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you.
No? All right. Back to you.
Terrific work, Evelyn. Just thank you for being a leader for this committee. With that, we are actually on time. I'm opening up the meeting for new business from the trustees. Anything of note? If not, I guess we can move to public comments. Pamela?
Yes, we only have two today. The first is Amber DeAngelis, and the second is Alyssa Kadillik. Alyssa, we can bring the microphone up to you. All right. And Amber, microphone's right over there. You each will get 2 minutes, and I'll let you know when the time is up.
All right. Hi, my name is Amber DeAngelis. I'm the Research Services Team Leader, and I'm here just to give you my update about our upcoming Research Services programming. Our Local and Family History series, our longstanding series, has kicked off. It kicked off last week, but there are a few programs I would like to highlight. We have something almost every week until the 18th of December. So, of note, there is Forensic Genealogy with Christine Cochran. This is an online event. We also have a lecture that's going to be about from Margaret Newell, who's going to be discussing the stories of Native American and Black people escaping slavery, and that will be on November 7th. We also have a genealogy of Native American ancestors. That'll be on November 20th. And we are also hosting a program from My China Roots. It's our database, which covers the genealogy for the Chinese diaspora. It has been super valuable getting that resource, and so we have been offering classes on how to use that resource for free to the public. So we have a number of events. I have asked Pamela to include all of the descriptions of the events in your packet, so you'll get that later. I would like to see all you there, either online or here in this wonderful lecture hall. So yeah, tell your friends' friends, and a hearty welcome to Nicole Santiago. Thank you.
Thank you, Amber. And it's in your inbox. I just sent it as she was talking, so you have the list of those in when you get back to your office. And next we have Alyssa Kadillik. Thank you, Alyssa. You have 2 minutes.
Great, thank you. Good morning. And congratulations and welcome to our new trustees. I just have a couple of things. One is about the security. AFSCME raised this issue months ago to the administration. At that time, we did ask if it took one of our members getting hurt for changes to be made. And unfortunately, that is what happened. Some of our members have been assaulted outside. We do appreciate the steps that the library and the city have taken now. There need to be more that happen. Part of that is also years ago, before the early retirement incentive, the heads of security or the supervisors of security used to be in the AFSCME bargaining unit. We would like to see a return to that. We know we're in mid-contract, and so this is the time to talk about it. And we have job descriptions, we have experience, we know what that looks like. We think that having the management and the supervisors of the security be Boston Public Library employees is important. It has a little bit more of ownership. And so we would like to see a return of those upper level positions of security return to the AFSCME bargaining unit. We're also concerned because there was an incident that was raised with, unfortunately, one of our clinics, our partnerships with the Ryan Immigration Clinic, that it came to my attention because there was a threat, unfortunately, against one of their attorneys. It was raised to library staff in Central. That clinic happens at the branches. No information was sent out to the branches, and unfortunately, when I reached out to the head of security, to Ali, the response I got made it seem like he had no knowledge of it. After communicating with our community learning partners, I learned that in fact he did have knowledge of it and was working on it, and that shortly thereafter they did cancel those clinics at the branches and here at Central. But that lack of communication and that continued lack of paying attention to the security and support of the membership of all library employees, not just the members that I represent at AFSCME 1526, is concerning and is one of the things that staff are really talking about, that they feel that they are not being supported security-wise, that they're not being supported in, that the public is coming first. When we read the missives that come out from our senior leadership, it always mentions the public first. It doesn't mention the staff first. And that is something that people read and take into account.
Thank you, Alyssa.
Just one last second, if you would. Anything the trustees can do, we understand with our vacancies. Some of that is at City Hall. Some of it obviously is the residency and the cost of living, but a lot of it is things get tied up at City Hall because it goes through 20 procedures or processes. So anything the trustees can do to help with that, I think, I can see David nodding, so I think that we're all in agreement on this one, that we need help. We need help at the city agencies, and maybe that's something you can help us with. Thank you.
Thank you. And that is it for public comment.
Can I just add one thing before we adjourn? Everybody's got a green card at their desk or at their seat. The Associates of the Boston Public Library every year sponsors the Pierce Performance Series. This is the 150th anniversary of the birth of Sergei Kozovitsky. We're doing a bunch of joint programming with the Boston Symphony Orchestra. The dates of these programs, which will be fantastic, are on the card. I hope that everyone will think about attending. Sorry to do that out of order. I guess that falls under new business.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. Great. And I've been getting to know the special collections, so incredible work from your leadership, but also the associates, and eager to see my own tour of the special collections behind the scenes. So I think with that, no further public comments, then we will adjourn. The next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, November 19th, 2024, 3 p.m. at the Mattapan branch. Eager to see everybody, and on a personal note, eager to have everybody within the trustee group contribute and talk more in between meetings, right? So I'll be reaching out to individuals, and thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.